Hello, everybody, and welcome to another WCBN Sports interview. I'm Charlie Goodwin. We hope you're all staying safe in these times. We've definitely seen better of them. We have a very special guest today. He is the PA announcer for the New York Mets, as well as the New York Riptide and the New York Open. He's also a three-time Emmy winner, Colin Cosell. Colin, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. I've been spared of all the things in the pandemic, with the exception of the stay-at-home thing, and I have a great wife and an awesome puppy, so it really hasn't been all that bad. Thanks.
Sounds pretty good. Um, I guess I can't complain in these times either. It's just staying safe, all we could really ask for. But to start off with the questions, in unprecedented times like this where there's no sports, obviously something your job relies very heavily on, what have you been doing to keep busy? I know you've started a few projects such as the Call Me Up Colin and Now on Deck, but I'd like for you to explain those a little bit more to the audience.
Well, sure. I started the Call Me Up Colin thing in December of 2018, right after I'd finished my first season with the Mets. The reason for that is I wanted to connect with the fans more, and I wanted to, have them get used to my voice and get used to me on a more personal level. So I just kind of did it as a contest. The first 10 to respond on Twitter using the hashtag Call Me Up Colin, I would do a personalized call up like I do in the ballpark. Their name, jersey number, position, and walk up song. I would produce it for them. I got about 90 replies. And then after Christmas, I kind of felt bad. Saw some people on Twitter like, "Oh, I missed it," and I didn't, excuse me, I didn't want to leave anyone, in the dust. So I ended up producing the other 80 of them, and it was fun, and the fans appreciated it, and I kind of bolstered my presence on Twitter with them, and they knew that I was there for them as well, and wanted to be their friend. So fast forward to Saturday, March 14th, 2020. And the stay-at-home orders are put into place in New York State. At that point, we knew that baseball was postponed indefinitely, and the first thing that came to my mind was to bring back Call Me Up Colin, and that way I have that feeling of being in the booth, announcing names over and over again, and people can bring a piece of the ballpark home with them and feel a little bit of comfort and normalcy while there are no sports. That ended up snowballing, got a lot of press coverage, and I'm still getting caught up on them. And when it's all said and done, I will have done about 1,200 of them. With that, a friend of mine who's the play-by-play announcer for Orlando City football, or rather Orlando City Soccer Club in MLS, Bruce Silverman, we teamed up together and decided to broaden the Call Me Up Colin idea to include all PA announcers, and then from there, broadcasters and people that are kind of local legends. They're not huge on the national stage per se. We have a few that are, and we put them into a legends category, but and create this platform so that these announcers could make some extra money and connect with their fans and give their fans a really cool thing, all for, a nominal fee. And then a portion of that would go to COVID-19 relief through rescue.org. So, it kind of made it this fully encompassing thing where everyone benefits from it. Now on deck, the acronym for it is NOD, and that's what we call the little recordings and messages people get. We call them nods, because in sports, when a coach puts you in a game, you get a nod. He gives you a nod.
Yeah.
That means you're in the game, or it's a universal sign of respect in sports as well. Someone gives you a nod, nice play, what have you. So we just had a lot of fun with that acronym, and cute little, names for the talent pool. We call them Nodcasters. We've referred to all of our social media as Nodcast Booth, and, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, they're all Nodcast Booth. And it all kind of worked organically. And we launched that on the 18th, I want to say. Yeah, it was Monday, the 18th of May. And it's been great. It's been overwhelming response. Everyone seems to be very pleased with it, and we're growing every day. And tell you what, it takes a special kind of human being to launch a business during a pandemic, but alas, here we are.
Well, it's very impressive to not only give back, but also to try to give fans any sort of like semblance of sports they can. Sports World's kind of doing all they can to give fans anything, whether it's the match with Tiger and Phil or that horse challenge the NBA put on. But continuing with pro sports, I know there's been a lot of news in the media about this struggle between the players and the owners in the MLB. What's your take on that? And do you see baseball coming back this season?
I just want everyone to be safe. I could see baseball coming back. There's going to be a lot of details hammered out, and I think the players want to be safe as well. And because they're putting themselves at risk in putting themselves in a situation where social distancing is not necessarily possible. Someone slides home, you're not going to have the catcher jump out of the way because he may have COVID.
Right.
That you can't tag someone coming into first, socially distant. You can't tag them with a 6 foot long stick. So there's a lot of things they have to hammer out. If it comes back, that's great. If it doesn't, I understand. I've made my peace with that. It took a little bit of time for me to do so, but it's gotten to the point now where I've seen enough people get sick from this. I've seen enough people die from it personally. I've had friends die. We had one of our photographers with the New York Post,
Right.
Anthony Cosell, die. And that stuff hits home. And it's at this point where I'm like, a human life is far more important than sports. Sports will be back eventually, but I just want everyone to be safe. The players, the fans, everyone at every ballpark.
Right. And I think a lot of people, even not included in the players slash owners, have lost sight of that in their kind of hunger to get sports back. And it's an important thing to not lose sight of, obviously.
Well, and and also it starts in DC and it trickles on down. I mean,
Right.
everyone is very eager to get the economy up and moving again and get some semblance of normalcy. And doing so, I think we've lost sight of the severity of this disease. I mean, this virus, it is potentially lethal, and enforcing this along, I think is a problem. And unless there are safe ways to get things back to normal, I don't understand why we're forcing the issue here. But that's another
Right.
topic for
Yeah.
another time on like Daily News or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Um, you mentioned quickly a sentence or two about the legends in the Now on Deck um, project you're doing, but you are, of course, the grandson of a legend, Howard Cosell, one of the most highly respected names in sports journalism and broadcasting in history. So I'm curious as to how much influence your grandfather had on your decision to pursue a career in sports broadcasting.
Everything. I was 5 years old when I first sat on my grandfather's lap and watched him do his radio show from his bedroom in West Hampton Beach. He had a summer house out in Long Island, and ABC had set up a line from his house to ABC, so he could. I mean, at that point, he'd earned his stripes. He'd earned the right to be able to record from home. And of course, this was state of the art at that time.
Right.
So of course, it had all to tech glitches, and it was kind of dialed in through a phone line. It was this whole big to do. But I remember seeing his microphone and headphones in his bedroom one day, and it's like, what's that all about? And not so many words. I was 5, but he said, well, that's where I do my radio show. I was like, can I watch you do that sometime? He said, sure. So my grandmother woke me up one morning, and I went in, and I sat on his lap, put on his headphones, talked to his producer, whose name was Eddie. Last name is completely escaping me, but then again, that was 35 years ago. And I did my first ever sound check, and I spoke into this microphone, and then I heard the playback, and I was hooked. I didn't even know what my grandfather did for a living. I didn't know he was famous. I just knew I had fallen in love with the microphone. And then obviously as I got older and I better understood what celebrity entailed and why he was a celebrity, and what he did for a living, it influenced me greatly. I thought I wanted to be just a sports broadcaster. What I didn't realize was I could be multiple things. And so I tried my hand at many different things throughout my adolescence and into my 20s, and even into my 30s to a certain degree. And I didn't get into sports broadcasting until I was about 30 years old. Um, I spent my 20s in radio, doing voiceovers. I did stand-up comedy. I mean, I was doing everything but sports broadcasting, mostly because I was scared of being compared to my grandfather and did not want
Hmm.
to try to fill those shoes. But by the time I was 30, it was like, you know what? It's been 15 years since he had passed away. It's okay to try this out and be my own brand of broadcaster. So
Right.
yeah, he was everything.
And I know you just gave a great story about the first time you found out what he did with the microphone and headset in his room. But is there a favorite, like standout favorite memory of your grandfather? Doesn't have to be within the lines of his work, just in general.
There's tons. We were very close. He was a very doting grandfather. In many ways, he was a father figure growing up, because my parents divorced when I was a very young age. So, I always think back on this one remarkable memory. It was Labor Day of 1992, I want to say. So my grandmother had passed away in 1990, and Howard was heartbroken. I mean, it really devastated him. And there's a train of thought that believes that if the wife dies first, in an elderly couple, the husband is soon to follow. It's expect that within a couple of years. Howard was a stubborn SOB and was not going to go down that easy. So he stuck around for about 5 more years. But all of that aside, getting back to the story at hand, I was swimming in the pool. I think the family, we were at his house in West Hampton. And I think the family was out at the beach or something. I don't know. I was 12 at the time. And my grandfather was inside watching the Yankees game. And he called me out and he said, "Son, you've got to come in here." And I mean, like, he just came out on the deck and bellowed this, and it scared the hell out of me. So from what I recall, I just like levitated out of the pool and just like had a towel around me, was in there as quickly as possible. And he said, "You've got to see this. There's a one-armed pitcher for the Yankees about to get a no-hitter." And lo and behold, it was Jim Abbott. And we sat there and we watched it together, and watched Jim Abbott pitch this no-hitter. And my grandfather remarked on, that you can overcome anything if you put your mind to it and put in the hard work and everything. You can have any sort of setback or anything against you, or be missing half a limb and still be a professional athlete and do something that a large percentage, I mean, 90+% of all pitchers in the history of baseball have never done on the professional level. And anyway, that's one that really stands out to me.
Yeah, that's definitely a great memory. Also, obviously, one of the greatest moments in sports, in my opinion. Just the ability to overcome that Jim Abbott had was incredible. But moving back to your career, what would you say throughout all that you've done, the stand-up comedy, the PA announcer, the radio shows, what has been your favorite memory from your career?
um, I don't know, because there's like one for each genre. When I was doing musical theater, it was the summer of '97 in a production of Guys and Dolls. I played Nicely Johnson. I sang "Sit Down, You're Rockin' the Boat." And I just graduated from high school, and the director of the show was a very good friend of mine. It was this summer theater troupe. And I really wanted to lead, because I was like, I've put in my time. I wanted to play Nathan Detroit. I just played Sky Masterson in production at my high school in a few months prior. And politics played a role. I didn't get part. I got Nicely. He's like, "But I will let you take Sit Down, You're Rocking the Boat and run with it and make it your own." And I did. And on the final night, I went into the audience and was singing. Like, I went a couple of times, and I was all over the place. I just told the spotlight operator, "Just follow me wherever I go," and she said, "Okay." And when we finished, there was a 2-minute. I've timed it because I remember watching the video. I was so taken aback by it. 2 minute and 37-second standing ovation, and it literally stopped the show. It was a showstopper. And that was one of the greatest memories of my entire life. But in stand-up comedy, it was the night I went up after Chris Rock and right before Jay Leno. And I don't remember what I said in my set. All I know is the crowd was so hyped over the fact that Chris Rock was there. It didn't matter. Like, I could have gone up there and insulted their families one by one, and they still would have been eating out the palm of my hand. And that was a surreal night. And the best part was I had friends in the audience that night who can vouch for it, because that seems like that's impossible, but it very much happened. In radio, it was the night I did an overnight shift, my first radio gig when I was 19 years old, an oldie station on Long Island. And the night, this is not a highlight, but it taught me about versatility and being able to pivot on the fly. I was on the air from midnight to 5:30, 6 nights a week. And the night, it was July 17th, I want to say. when JFK Jr.'s plane went down off of Long Island, and the news came across the wire, and they had me stay in studio because the morning guy was doing a live remote somewhere. I stayed on air for 14 hours that day.
Wow.
I finally got off air at 2:30 in the afternoon, and was kind of balancing between being a liaison with the updating the news and keeping an eye on it, and learning how to handle news like that, because it came across the AP wire, but we were instructed to not say anything. So it was a somber day, but an unbelievable day for me because I learned a ton. Um, in sports broadcasting, it was I'd always wanted to do play-by-play in hockey. Hockey's my number one sport. And when I got to do the New Jersey high school championships from play-by-play, I'd done them countless times as a color commentator and sideline reporter. But to do play-by-play of Don Bosco Prep and Del Barton, two of the top programs in New Jersey, that was unbelievable for me. I mean, you'd think with broadcasting it would be like winning 3 Emmys, but no, it was actually being able to call a game, because the sports is much more exciting than the trophies. The trophy is a fleeting moment, but
Right.
being a part of someone else's memories and being able to call that game, that's eternal. Um, and as a PA announcer, calling up David Wright in his final at bat was pretty wild. I mean, I've gotten to call up some really cool people to do first pitches. Jerry Seinfeld, and
Yeah.
got to be part of an episode of Madam Secretary. And they used my voice in the show, and that was awesome. But David Wright's final at bat. So you asked for 1, I gave you 4. I'm sorry. You're welcome.
That was a perfect answer. It was really interesting to just hear about every portion of your career, and especially for me being a Mets fan, to hear about you calling David Wright's last at bat. That's an emotional moment for any Mets fan and a lot of baseball fans too. So that's really cool that you were able to do that. And then last parting wisdom, what is your advice to anyone looking to pursue a career in sports journalism?
First and foremost, be a good person. If you're going to broadcast or into journalism, just be nice. It goes a long way. If you're going into broadcast, befriend your crew, get to know everyone from the director down to the replay guy, to the graphics guy, all your cameramen. These are the people that make you look and sound good. If you've got a stats guy, make sure you're friends with all of them. They tend to be more interesting anyway. Like they're a quirky, funny bunch. Obviously, you want to get along well with your fellow broadcaster, and be nice to them. If they're not nice to you, just do your job and move on. You don't have to see them again. You just have to spend a couple hours with them. Outside of that, versatility. Don't be a one-trick pony. I can't say that for journalism per se, although it doesn't hurt to have additional skills. Being able to use Avid or Adobe After Effects or Adobe Audition for audio, right down to Audacity, or if you're able to edit video and sound, if you're able to operate a camera, if you're able to operate a switcher, that gives you such versatility that if the jobs are not there that you want to pursue, you can still pursue them, but you need to make money. That is a necessity in this life, unfortunately, unless you happen upon a $10 million scratch off card. But that's more than likely not going to happen. So be versatile, be very good at a bunch of things, be great at 1 to 2 things, because in order to be great at a couple things, you have to put in a lot of work. It takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of practice. And you can't dedicate yourself to being great at many, many things, because it takes up too much time and you'll drive yourself crazy in the process. So be great at 1 or 2 things, but be very good at some other things as well. Versatility goes a long way in this industry.
Those are definitely all great pieces of advice, and some stuff that, even though I've only been doing this sort of thing for a little over 2 years now, is something that things that I've definitely seen and I can definitely agree with thus far. So thank you once again for taking your time out of your day to do this for us. Any last thoughts you want to share with the audience, or no?
I just think it would have been incredibly awkward if you were like, Colin, I disagree with both of those things, and here's why. And on that, have a good day. No, that's it. Thanks for having me. I hope I didn't bore your viewers or listeners. And with my inane drivel, I have a tendency to ramble on. My poor wife has has heard me talk far too many times and has heard these stories far too many times. So thank you for having me, and I hope I was able to impart some wisdom. I don't know, because I'm a goofy 40-year-old child who just happens to be living his dream job. Hopefully I helped someone along the way.
I
Oh, and
think.
visit nowondeck.com. Of course, I got to plug my business.
Oh, well, I think you definitely gave the audience a lot to think about, as well as a lot to appreciate in your answers today. So with that, for Colin Cosell, I'm Charlie Goodwin. Good night and go blue.